So good evening. Thank you all for joining the Southwest Area Command Community Policing Council July meeting. We're excited to bring you some additional content we think will be educational as well as evoke a lot of discussion. So so the time is 6:01. I'm John Madison. I'm the Southwest CPC Vice Chair, and so I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. I'm currently sharing the agenda for our meeting tonight for all those that are joining us via Zoom. But I will dictate what we're doing for those that are just joining us by phone. So the first item on the agenda is the call to order. The second item is the approval of the agenda. And so any of the Southwest CPC members that are online, we would certainly like to have a motion for approval of the agenda unless anyone sees something missing. Andrea, you're muted.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Yep, I approve. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion to approve and a second. It's been moved and properly seconded for approval of the agenda as printed. Unless there's any unreadiness, I think we can vote. And you can just vote by raising your hand. I can visually see the council member. So just raise your right hand if you approve. Okay, there are no no's. Abstentions have the same right. So, okay, that motion passes. Okay, so we will move forward with the agenda as printed. And a couple of housekeeping tips and just reminders for those that are joining us virtually via Zoom as well as via phone. We certainly love to engage in conversation and dialogue, and we view the Southwest CPC meetings as a way to give the community a voice and an opportunity to dialogue among these very important topics around community policing as well as police activity. So if you do have questions, feel free to include them or add them in the chat. There also is a Q&A function as well. You can use that also. And so myself and the other members of the Southwest CPC will be monitoring those, and we will work those questions in as time allows and as they make sense with the current points of discussion. So we certainly invite all questions, and we will do our best to get those asked to our experts who are joining us tonight. Okay, so that's pretty much it on housekeeping. For the Southwest CPC members that are joining us, since you all have panelist ability, we would ask that you mute unless you're talking. And if any Southwest CPC members or anyone on the panel would like to interject or ask a question, just use the raise hand function. That way we can get to you orderly without breaking the flow or our speakers' kind of thoughts. So with that, I also would like to entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the last meeting, the June 2021 meeting, which I believe have already been circulated. So if any of the Southwest CPC members like to move for approval of the approval of the minutes from the June meeting. Okay, I see a hand raised by Andrea, so I'm assuming she'd like to move. Is there a second? Okay, Stephanie second. So it's been moved and probably seconded for approval of the minutes from the June 2021 meeting. And so all in favor, just show by raise your hand, Southwest CPC members. Okay, great, that motion passes. Okay, so that brings us to actually the topic of today. And so I will be turning it over to Stephanie, who will introduce not only our panelists, but who will also moderate the conversation. And anyone that would like to ask questions, myself and Andrea will be on deck to get those questions asked verbally so everyone can hear and then get some input from our panelists on those topics or those questions and those inquiries. And so with that, I will say the title of this today's session is actually the third part of a three-part series we've been doing for the past 2 months, which is this month is titled Homelessness and Veterans Diversion Programs, and specifically the other side of law and order part 3, prosecutorial alternatives. And so this is a third part in a series where we're looking at what happens not just in the policing kind of initial encounter arrest side of the legal system, but what happens after an arrest. And so we'll be looking at veterans diversion programming as an archetype for one of the special ways in which we are pursuing, and the Department of Justice is the Bernalillo County D's office and Metro Court pursue prosecution alternatives for persons that might be involved in the legal system but might need additional resources. So with that, I'll turn it over to Stephanie, who will provide us an introduction to our speakers. And then Stephanie, you can take it away.
Hey, hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting. I know we're all having a hard time getting adjusted to the opening after COVID and just from summer activities. So we appreciate you coming along and joining us. I'd like to introduce our panel tonight. Tonight we have Major Dorothy Seaton. Let me see here. Dorothy Seaton grew up in rural Iowa and enlisted as a private in the Army in 1971. In 1974, after leaving active duty, she began her National Guard service. She attended Officer Candidate School and moved to New Mexico, and commanded a public affairs detachment while also assigned as the full-time state public affairs officer at the National Guard headquarters. Before retiring as a major with 21 years of service in 1992, she was a personnel officer at the Texas National Guard Armored Division headquarters, moving back to Sante Fe in 2013. She felt that this was home, and that's why she came back to New Mexico. Well, we're glad to have you back, Major Seaton. Since 2016, she has volunteered on the City of Sante Fe Veterans Advisory Board and currently chairs the VAB. Moving back to Sante Fe in 2013, like I said, she felt it was home. And let me see, in 2020, she joined the Veterans and Military Families Caucus of the Democrat Party of New Mexico, where she is serving as vice chair of the Committee for Veterans Advocacy. Our next panelist will be Adolfo Mendez. We had him last month, if anybody was able to attend our last month's meeting. Mr. Mendez is the Chief Policy and Planning and serves at the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office under the administration of District Attorney Raul Torres. During his tenure at the office, Adolfo has focused on modernizing the practice of law and improving workflow processes in the office, emphasizing the use of technology and data sharing to further the goals. At this time tonight, he has agreed to help us and talk about the district attorney's diversion programs that they offer. So we welcome him back. So thank you, Mr. Mendez, for joining us. Our next panelist, I don't know if he's on yet, but I'm sure he'll be joining us, is Lieutenant Colonel Tyrone Finch. He is a mentor coordinator for Bernalillo County Metro Community Veterans Court Program and also serves as a mentor for veterans in District 2 Veterans Court programs. Lieutenant Colonel Tyrone Finch is currently serving as a lead instructor assigned to the Command and General Staff Officers course. His primary duties as a lead instructor is developing military officers for future command roles and responsibilities. As a civilian, Tyrone Finch serves as the Transition Assistant Advisor for the state of New Mexico and also VP Operations for Spartan Cybersecurity. In his capacity at the TAA of New Mexico, Tyrone guides, advises, and helps currently active service personnel, veterans, and family members of such personnel receive benefits earned for the service of our nation. Mr. Finch also brings 14 years of financial experience as a financial analyst with Cardinal Health and also served as staff accountant for the U.S. Property of Fiscal of the New Mexico National Guard. So we want to welcome all of you. And at this time, I believe we're going to start off with Mr. Mendez and have him talk about the services that are provided for our veterans and for others in our community that can help them with their troubles. So Mr. Mendez, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Grego. Appreciate being with you all again this evening. I'm Adolfo Mendez. And I guess I'll just highlight a couple of programs, and they're not necessarily programs with the DA's office, but more programs that are available through what are called specialty courts in both our Metro Court, which handles misdemeanor level cases, and our District Court, which handles the felony level cases. And I know I talked a little bit about what cases the DA's office handles the last time I was with y'all, but I'll repeat repeat a little bit about that in terms of what goes into the Metro Court. In other words, that misdemeanor court. The DA's office only handles domestic violence cases and DWI cases, and a small number of other cases that could get referred to us, but primarily our work in that misdemeanor side is is domestic violence and DWI. And the program for veterans that's available in the Metro Court is called Community Veterans Court. And if we had a little bit more time, I think I would refer your group to Ana Quintana Sanchez at the Metro Court. She's sort of the go-to person for this program. Like she's extremely passionate about it and very knowledgeable and helps run the program in the Metro Court. But our office does definitely participate in it, right? So we have attorneys who are assigned to that Metro Court, and there are 2 tracks for our veterans in that court. One is before there's any adjudication of guilt, and then one after, right? So they would in the one that's no adjudication of guilt, they don't have to plead guilty. They just go into the diversion program, and basically go through supervision and treatment and programming through the VA's office. That's the providers. My understanding is the VA hospital that helps provide the various treatment. The second track is when someone does have to plead guilty and then goes through the process again of treatment. Where folks have to plead guilty is in the more serious instances, or where someone's a person that is a repeat offender. So those are the 2 programs that are available actually the one program with 2 tracks available for veterans in the misdemeanor court. And I will say that there are multiple specialty courts. So I know the interest was to talk about what's available for veterans, but there are a series of other courts available, and I think folks should just know that they're out there. So in addition to this specific one for veterans, there are behavioral health courts, DWI behavioral health courts, a program called Early Intervention Program. There's a domestic violence program that's called STEP, Solutions Treatment and Education Program. There's a Native American, Urban Native American Healing to Wellness Court. There's another DWI recovery court and outreach court. And so there are lots of efforts to try to provide alternative pathways that often result in better outcomes, right? For folks that go through this. It's a harder path than it perhaps, right? Because treatment takes work, right? And so folks that engage in the treatment, I think the outcomes are better for the individual and for the community when folks are eligible for these types of programs. So I just wanted to kind of paint that larger picture that there are other efforts, other specialty courts, and yes, there is this one specialty court for veterans to take advantage of and hopefully help stabilize. I did speak to our attorneys who are involved. They are also extremely passionate, and perhaps they would have been better suited to be with you this evening, but you got stuck with me. But extremely passionate about the work and dedicated to working and serving veterans. There's capacity, and this is the case in all of our diversion courts. We are at the DA's office consistently trying to increase the number of participants, like find eligible people and get them enrolled. It takes the defendant, then the individual who's charged, to also agree, and for defense counsel to also be participating. And so although we make the offers, we're not at capacity. So that's one thing that I know that I'm personally pushing for all of our diversion programs. I know DA Torres emphasizes it, and whenever we have opportunities to talk about diversion, we talk about our efforts to maximize the services that are available, and and so we talk about it. We say they're not at capacity. They should be full. We want them to be full. They're not there yet, and it's an area that we are definitely pushing on to try to get them maximized, because the services are there. But we recognize that it's a harder path, right? Going into treatment is a harder path. So anyway, that exists. On the district court side, it's a little bit more informal. The Veterans Court has been in transition, but there are still services available on the felony side, but it's not as formalized as the Community Veterans Court. But still, there are services available, and it has a slightly different name. Give me 1 second I think it's called, I don't think it's called the Veterans Diversion Program. I think it is Veterans Diversion Program, VDP. And that's another avenue for veterans to take advantage of a different way of moving through the judicial system. So, and similarly, just as there are in Metro Court, in the Metropolitan Misdemeanor Court, there are similarly diversion courts on the felony side in the district court, drug court, mental health court, DWI court, and a young adult court. So again, other ways to try to move through the judicial system with an eye towards trying to provide treatment and support so that the underlying issues are addressed and hopefully a person doesn't repeat. So I'll leave it at that with that overview and pass it on to the next person.
Okay, I have one question for you. It is, what are some of the factors that do qualify a person for a diversion program? And if you answered that, I'm sorry, I got distracted. But what would qualify a person to get these programs, or should we have somebody else in the panel that could answer these?
I can say for we kind of just describe them as for like the track one, the lower level track. It's literally for low risk offenders that haven't had like repeat offenses, and because we're talking the misdemeanor court, again, we work with, these are primarily going to be domestic violence cases. So a misdemeanor domestic violent case, like let's say their first time, they would have to be a veteran, for example, to qualify for the Community Veterans Court, and just identification that they were veterans, and then they get staffed up, discussed, and then either admitted. For the more serious one, it's going to be a repeat person, right? Someone that's been in like multiple times being charged for a misdemeanor domestic violence. There's a lot more vetting on the district court side, and it would be better, like one of our attorneys that are embedded in that program would be much better suited. But for these programs, they'd have to be veterans first. Yeah.
I want to welcome Lieutenant Finch. Thank you for joining us. How are you? Do either one of you, Major Seaton or Lieutenant Finch, have any questions for Mr. Mendez regarding your advocacy for our veterans?
Yes, I have a question. If you're going to stick with us, Mr. Mendez, you'll hear me talk about the Veterans Court Initiative that I'm involved in. Your court in the 2nd District is not participating in that yet. And there are 2 other courts in the state, the 3rd District, Las Cruces, and the district out in Alamogordo, who are participating. They have operating veterans courts there, and they're mentoring 4 new judicial districts that don't have veteran courts to help them get one up and running in 4 new districts. Would you be interested, or would your the lady whose name you mentioned a little while ago, your main rep, would they be interested in joining the Veterans Court Initiative and collaborating with these other courts, and particularly teaching the new ones how to set one up?
Ms. Seaton, let me make clear, I'm not with the courts. So,
Okay.
so at the DA's office, I think we have had, we've been participating in, it's not the official Veterans Court, as you noted, it's on the district court side, it's a Veterans Diversion Program right now. And we have had attorneys very engaged in that work. I think we'd be willing to participate if it became a full-fledged Veterans Court. Those same attorneys would just take on that role in an official Veterans Court capacity. But I'm not with the court, so I can't
Okay, understood.
speak for the courts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mendez, and I'm sure we'll invite you back again. So at this time, I think Major Seaton, if you would like to tell us all about your initiatives and what you do for our veterans and how you advocate to see that they are served properly and fairly. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell us what all you do and how you advocate for us.
You covered some of the veteran volunteer work that I do. I'm completely retired, so nobody pays me to do any work anymore. I just give my work away for free. So that's what I do in my retirement. And you will find, if you know veterans, or if you are a veteran or a military member, that once you start a life of service, it's kind of hard to put it down. You find some other way to serve. So that's what I'm doing. As Stephanie mentioned, I retired in 1992. That was a lifetime ago for some of you. So I found my way here in New Mexico to finally joining the Veterans Caucus of the Democratic Party right before the legislative session. And I joined the advocacy committee because I'm interested in legislation at a state level that can help veterans in any way possible. Then I got interested in the veteran court concept because one of our caucus members works for the state court's office. And he knew that there were these 3 jurisdictions that already have a veterans court. Part of my background that wasn't in my bio is that I spent 13 years in prison, working, not being an inmate and learning to be a better inmate, but working in a therapeutic community drug prison. 500 inmates, pre-release, in a 9-month drug treatment program. And 9 months is a very long time to be in treatment. But when you think about it, it took longer than 9 months to get to that point in life for those inmates. So I have a deep, what I want to say, a deep appreciation for rehabilitation and what it can do for the life of a person, their family, their loved ones, the community they live in, the employers they work for. Everybody benefits from that kind of restorative justice. And I know your topic is about what happens after the arrest. Well, the 13 years I spent in that program was long after the arrest. It was at the end of a prison sentence, sometimes many years after the arrest. But I could see from working with those inmates, and that was an adult male setting, 18 to in their 80s, some of them, what good it can do a person and their family. And I want to stress family and community in that, because a person isn't a standalone entity. There are a lot of people connected to that one person. A lot of people that care for them or used to care for them, or they're separated from them because of their bad behavior, or they've lost that job, but that was the best boss they ever had, and they want to renew that acquaintance when they get their life in order. So restorative justice is a very good investment. I will say that in terms of public money and in terms of legislation, it is an effort that pays off because it costs a little bit more to run a veterans court or to run a drug treatment prison because of the extra staff involved. And that would be the social workers and the treatment professionals and all the kind of wraparound family services that go with that. It costs a little more to set that up, and it's a little more complex to administer. However, in the long run, it saves public money because, as Mr. Mendez pointed out in a very excellent way, it lowers recidivism. So this isn't the revolving door of prison where you go to prison, learn to be a better inmate. They let you go in the community, you reoffend, you go back to prison, and you repeat that cycle. Many people do that. So that costs money, that costs public money to house those inmates and to go through the courts another time. And it costs loss of family income. It costs, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the community. So the value of it is in the long run, not in the short run. In the short run, it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work to administer the program. It's a lot of work for the person in the program, because without their investment in terms of their time and effort and their focus on completing the requirements, it doesn't work without that. So there's that. I just wanted to let you all know that I had a deep background in the prison end of treatment. And now, since the legislative session ended, the advocacy committee wanted to find a new project. So we created the Veterans Court Initiative, and we are a collaborative group pulling together the judicial districts in Santa Fe, Taos, Rio Rancho, and Silver City, who are interested in a veterans court but do not yet have one. And as a part of the initiative group, I have the program manager from the state judicial office, and I have the VA outreach coordinator for the courts, who is Camila Lopez. Mr. Mendez might know of her. And I have people from the Alamogordo court and the Las Cruces court, the program managers there, that are mentoring the newly interested people. We get together once a month and we brainstorm on what barriers are you having to setting up your court? Are you finding all of the pieces in your community, because every community is different? Are you finding the treatment provider? Are you finding the volunteer mentors? Are you finding what you need to put the pieces together to make this court? Our last session was a really good one because we had a representative from the national group that does training for drug court or for veteran court professionals to tell us all about the training process. So every month we get a little smarter, and every month we get to know one another a little better. And what's working for one of these groups in one location and can kind of cross-pollinate over to another location. They can help each other through the process too. So that's what we're doing in the Veterans Court Initiative. And that's my piece of the advocacy for that right now. I happen to also live in Santa Fe, so I chair the Veterans Advisory Board for the city here. And I've been a member of the Women Veterans of New Mexico organization. So I do a lot of volunteering for veterans organizations. And by doing that, have become familiar with people and organizations who are interested in supporting veterans in a positive way. You know that somebody that serves in the military, particularly somebody that serves in a combat zone or in a combat related setting, experiences a lot of trauma and stress. It can be a very stressful occupation. It can harm your physical health. It can harm your mental and emotional health. PTSD is a common thing that happens from that. Now, not all veterans experience that. Some have different coping skills than others. Some have different work experience than others. But those who do experience those things in a way that really impacts their life and their ability to live life when they come home from the military and reintegrate to the community, sometimes that process is a rough process. And sometimes that person acts out and has bad behavior that gets them in trouble with the courts, and they end up in court. What is helpful about a veteran court process is particularly the veteran mentors who are volunteers, like myself for the most part, who stand up by that veteran in the court and kind of mentor them and guide them through it. The military culture is kind of based on not leaving anybody behind, staying together as a unit, remembering our values. It's a occupation of service. So sometimes a veteran loses their way and they lose track of the sight of what their values and their culture were as a veteran. And the veteran mentor can kind of bring them back and get them grounded in the process of what needs to be done and what the proper procedures are for getting through that structured program. The military life can be very structured and demanding. And sometimes when you come back to civilian life, it's not structured and you don't have a job yet and you don't have a place to live yet. So it's not very demanding and the wheels kind of fall off the wagon in that process. So I would say to you that are listening, that the Veterans Courts kind of, Mr. Mendez covered this in a very good way. Modeled on the drug courts, which is an older restorative justice method. We find through research that they're very effective. Not everybody succeeds, so we can't expect 100%. And particularly in drug treatment, the percentages for success are quite low, actually. You would think it's not like passing your course in high school where you have to get a 80 or 90% to get a good grade. Like in drug treatment, success could be 50 or 60% of those that enter treatment actually finish. So it's a hard road. What else do I want to tell you? So we just started this initiative in the spring, and I feel like we've progressed really well. It's a good chemistry that the group has together. We ask questions. We have the right support people in the group. And so with that, I guess I would take some questions. I'll go back to legislative advocacy when the legislature reconvenes. But Monday, I'm going to have an appointment with the interim committee for Veterans Affairs, which are the legislators that serve in that committee in between sessions. I'm going to talk to them about Veterans Court and how they can introduce legislation, particularly legislation that has appropriation or funding attached to it, so that they can help the Veterans Courts get the resources they need for staffing, training, and other operational expenses so that more veterans can be served around the state. So, questions?
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we did get a question in the chat. They were asking, is there support for the families, or what types of support are there available for the families?
Yes, actually, in every court is different. Every judge runs their own courtroom. So I can't speak for everybody, but yes, families or loved ones can attend court sessions, can attend the staffing sessions where the veteran's progress is being reviewed by the whole treatment team, including the legal professionals, the treatment professionals, the volunteer mentors, you know, everybody. Every veteran has a whole team of people wrapped around them to help them get through it. Now, you can't, the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can't make everybody succeed, but you can give enough support and enough positive influence, I'll call it, to elevate the success of a veteran. And families, yes, can be involved, and loved ones, girlfriends, boyfriends, moms, dads, grandparents, sometimes employers or landlords, because getting employment and getting housing for a veteran who is a criminal offender is hard. Did that
Major
answer the
C.
question, you think?
Thank you. Yes.
Major C, not a question. You mentioned a couple of things, and I know they're big topics, but I wonder if you can maybe just distill it down and just kind of give us a bite. So you mentioned two things. You mentioned, you know, it's not 100%, right? Everyone doesn't necessarily succeed. So could you speak? Does data tell us about how effective these programs are, just generally speaking, in the case of veterans specifically? And then also, you also mentioned restorative justice. And I was wondering if you could maybe just speak a little bit about the philosophy of that and kind of what are the goals?
Okay, let me take the restorative justice piece. It's pretty self-defining. To restore is to bring something back to its original functional state, shall we say. So restorative justice is targeting getting someone who has lost their way and done some bad behavior back to a more functional, productive, positive lifestyle. Think about yourself as a young person. Most little kids and young people don't say to themselves, when I grow up, I'm going to be a prisoner in a jail. That's going to be my life. So people don't project getting there, but things happen in life and they lose their focus, they lose their way, there's some bad behavior. And particularly in the case of someone who doesn't have a long criminal record, it is more, I believe, and I believe the research would bear this out, it is more productive to use restorative justice methods than it is to just put someone in jail. Because during the Veterans Court process, they have community service assigned, they have treatment assigned, they have education, they have health care. Many of you know that when you're sick, you're not at your best, mentally, physically, your attitude goes. And for someone who has a physical illness, injury, disability, whatever, that's an issue too. So with physical care, mental and emotional care, and the treatment programs, either for the drug issue or the domestic violence issue, there's a wraparound service to bring somebody back up to a better positive functional level. That's kind of how I look at restorative justice. It's the role of the justice system to leave no one behind. Like we say in military terms, we don't leave anybody behind. Everybody comes home. So tell me the other part of your question again.
The other part was, you mentioned that it's not 100% successful, right? Everyone doesn't necessarily take to the treatment or is able to successfully complete the activity. Do we know from data, generally speaking, or even more specifically in New Mexico, what the success yield is for persons that are able to complete the programs and then satisfy the requirements and then get on to a more productive and healthy life?
I do not know the statistics in New Mexico, knowing that there are only three veteran courts that I know of. And I'm acquainted with the data manager, the IT manager at the state justice agency. And he's just now getting into this veteran court idea and being able to gather data as to who is a veteran. In some courts, they don't even gather that piece of data in the intake. So if, say, you were arrested and you went through an intake and you were going to go to court, the court might not even ask you if you're a veteran. And then there's the issue of people who are into criminal behavior are not always truthful and honest and like to tell you all about themselves. So if I ask you if you're a veteran and you don't want to tell me, you might lie. So self-reporting is not a good data point. So there has to be a data system where the judicial can tie into the Department of Defense military system to verify veteran status. And that doesn't mean you have to have an honorable discharge. It just means you have to have served to be a veteran. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
So I think to answer and not answer your question, I don't know that there's a lot of data available right now. Maybe Mr. Mendez has more information than I do, but I know that the data people at Justice at the state level are interested in developing that.
Thank you.
If I could just piggyback on that a little bit. Metro Corp, I would suspect the Annie Quintana Sanchez may have information about their numbers and who's going through the program. I don't have those numbers, but I would like to describe, like, as the major was talking, a different approach can have dramatically successful numbers, right? And I'll point to a different program, but this one works with juveniles. It's a program called Adobe, kind of provides wraparound services for juveniles who come into contact with the juvenile justice system. And what I mean by wraparound services, it looks at, okay, here's the individual, the young person, but what else is happening in the household to try to stabilize the household. So the study they did, they showed that the recidivism for these young folks was about 70%, right? So a person that came into contact with the criminal justice system, 7 out of 10 times, you'd expect to see them again, right? Folks that went through that and had that Adobe program intervention, the recidivism dropped to 21%. So when it's successful, right, you can see pretty remarkable differences. And as the major was talking about the costs of recidivism, you not only have the costs of the person being incarcerated, which per day, right, that adds up, or the cost of having the witness come back out, or the cost of the judge having to see them again, the cost of the prosecution and the defense, right, all of the costs that come with seeing the person again. If it's an effective program that can reduce that recidivism, you cut out those costs, so it comes out to be less expensive and hopefully better outcomes for those folks where that's the right intervention, right? Like I talked last time, for some folks, the right intervention is incarceration, right? For some folks, like, for example, like a criminal sex offender, right? The right intervention is not be with the community anymore, incarceration. But for lower risk, lower level offenders, these diversion programs meet the needs of the community at the same time as meeting the needs of that individual, their families, and overall justice, right? As the major was talking about restorative justice, right? So one way that we talk about it is repairing the harm, right? Like, can the person take responsibility and repair the harm by preventing it from happening again as well. And so I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on the major's excellent comments.
Yeah, and I would say there are related cost savings to society in general, in that a person who is getting their life together and becoming able to work again, able and willing to hold a job again, is going to be less cost to society. A person who is engaged in education for developing a new career is going to be a higher earner and a higher taxpayer. And they're going to support their family. They won't need public support for their family. So when you think of all the social costs that go into not only paying for the defendant in court or the offender in prison, but the costs of the family to the community and the loved ones, it is just an upgrade for everybody in general. It's a major cost saving to society, which is almost impossible to calculate because it reaches into so many different areas of life.
I don't know if my mic is or not. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Finch. I've been with the Metro Court program up here in Albuquerque for 8 years now. I started out with the 2nd District as the mentor. I'm currently the coordinator for the Metro Court with Ana Quintana Sanchez. So on the question about is it on the recidivism, in my 8 years of doing this, I've only seen like 6 guys total come back into the system, because we teach these guys when they get into the Metro Court system. When the veterans court, we teach them coping skills. They go to counseling. They have to do their drug test. We actually get them clean. So the whole thing is we've actually changed these guys' lives. Some of these guys are they're veterans. They've just slipped off and done something in their lives, well, either drug related or domestic violence that, they just fell off the horse, I call it. So then once we get them into treatment and they can deal with these PTSD issues and their actual addiction issues, and they got to go free in the program, it actually changes guys' lives. A lot of these guys, when I still run into them, they'll say how veterans court actually changed their life, how they were spiraling down. So the recidivism is really low out there for this. So it is a great program. If you have any questions, like for instance, I can tell you about how the program in Albuquerque is run. We currently have each program, we have 2 tracks, a track 1 program, which is a 6-month program. And like the gentleman said earlier, it's for the first-time offenders. Then we have a track 2 program, which is a year program. But imagine a year program of the drug testing and going to counseling and learning coping skills of what got you in trouble in the first place. After a year, and as they do all the programs, the writings and everything else we have to do in the community service, it brings them back into life. It gets them back on that horse. So when they actually graduate out of the veterans court, they're actually back to being a very productive person in society. So a lot of veterans, they just lost their way. But yeah, so it is as far as the recidivism rate, it is really low for the Metro Court of what we see coming back. So anybody have any questions for me as far as the Metro Court, how we run ours in Albuquerque, or how the district court was used to be run, I can answer those questions.
So there's a question out there, either for yourself or for Dorothy. It says, "Hi, Dorothy. My name is Christian. I am a U.S. Army veteran who lives here in the Southwest area. My question is, as a currently employed veteran, can you give me any tips on how a person like me can get involved in their free time to help the city's issue with homelessness?" And I guess specifically, maybe veterans homelessness.
Okay. I have one idea, and probably Colonel Finch would have some more ideas. One idea is to get involved at the Veterans Integration Center and do some volunteering out there. That is probably one of your best resources for homeless veterans that you have in the Albuquerque area. Tyrone, anything come to mind?
Yes.
Is there volunteer opportunities with the veteran court?
Exactly. And also they're looking to the Goodwill. There are like a couple of actual homeless veterans programs out there. Goodwill has a very good one. And also, like I said, the VIC has a very good one. The VIC is actually statewide. They can help veterans statewide. But if you look up just your local community services, there are actually homeless services out there offered by numerous organizations that just need volunteers. There are actual houses out there that will actually house a veteran, getting back on their feet. There's a food pantry shelters that'll help the veteran in the homelessness in the aspect of it. We do stand downs. For as you know, before the COVID hit, we had stand downs and Taos, Albuquerque, I mean, all over the state. And this is where we actually met a lot of those homeless veterans and got them into those services. I'm hoping we'll start those stand down back again, which was just a program a lot of the communities services put together for those homeless vets. But if you look up the your community stand down event for homeless veterans, and you'll see a lot of actual organizations. You can see which ones deal specifically with homelessness, and you can volunteer and help out that way. They will very much appreciate that.
Yeah, and it occurs to me to add to that, if you're employed veteran who asked the question there, want to make any donations for tax deductions, the VIC accept donations of clothing, household items to help veterans set up a new household. If they're coming out of homelessness into an apartment, they're going to need household items. So I would have that person check with the VIC and probably with Goodwill on what those programs need from a community resource like this person that asked the question. Also want to mention to all of you that are here, if you are a veteran or the spouse of a veteran or the child of a veteran, you can join and a registered Democrat. I know this isn't a partisan event and I'm not campaigning, but if you're all those things, you can join the Veterans Caucus, and we do a lot of advocacy that is nonpartisan like this, and like at the legislature, and like at the Veterans Court Initiative. That's totally nonpartisan.
Well, thank you, Major Seaton. Gave a lot of information, and thank you for everything you do. Lieutenant Colonel Finch, I would like for you to talk about the services at Metro Court and you said something about District Court. Do they still offer those services also?
Currently, District Court is looking for a judge. It was started by the District Court CV Veterans Program was started by Judge Whitaker, and then it went to Judge Aguirre, and she lost her seat. So then right now they're just looking for another judge to actually host it in their courtroom. Once they get that going, we can get that program up and running again. Now on our side, when you have a minor incident with the court, whatever, you're a veteran and you're going through the legal system, when you get your intake, they'll ask you, are you a veteran? And then like one of the guys said, we will actually have to staff you if you say yes, you want to join the veterans program, because to join the CVC, you're going to go ahead and pretty much say, yes, I did this. You're going to plead guilty pretty much to join the program, because now you're in the program, and this is a treatment program. So then once you get into the program, our clinicians will actually, they sit with the veteran, they see what the veteran's needs are, PTSD, what's going on with the veteran, and they set them up a whole treatment program. So between the treatment program and the drug testing and the community veterans court, we get these guys back where they were before they slid into the court system. But yeah, so we offer, like, for instance, we have First Nations, the VA, and a couple of organizations out there who do the counseling for us. And these veterans go through in IOP, individual counseling. They go through group sessions. And it's one of those things with veterans. Veterans like that camaraderie. So sitting around with other veterans and say, hey, this is where I'm at, it actually helps get them accountability toward each other and back to the way they were. And actually helps start bringing them forward, becoming a better citizen and getting back to where they were. Because a lot of them have just lost their way. They got out, the PTSD, lost their job. A lot of them had structure in the military. From what I can tell with them, they had all the years of structure. You knew what you were doing every single day. Then all of a sudden you retire, you get out of the military. What happens? And now you're you're in the civilian world, and there's no one saying child's at 0700. You got to be over here. So that's not there. And some of these guys, without that structure, start falling off. They don't get into a good job or some kind of field. Then that's when you get into the issues with the drug abuse, stuff like that. And then some of them, when they leave the military, they have PTSD issues, and then they weren't addressed in the military. Because when you're getting out of the military, everybody thinks you're fine. And until you're home, and then people realize, hey, dude, walking around with a gun 24/7 is not fine. And, quick to anger on a lot of small issues is not fine. And that's when they get caught up in the system. Over most of them is over petty stuff that actually escalates. But then once they get in, we try to give them those coping skills. Hey, this is what got you here. You weren't like this. And then we actually have gotten to a lot of these veterans, and actually have gotten them to see where they used to be and a better way of doing things. If we can't fix you, in the sense they're not really broken, but if we can't actually totally get you on the horse, at least we can give you the coping skills where you don't come back in the system. Maybe, you have to go take long walks, or you have to get a service animal, something to help you cope with your issues. But we try to give you, the veteran, something to say, hey, this is the way, this is the path you should be on for being a productive member of society. But do you want to do anything particular about the actual court system? Right now, Judge Murphy is the Metro Court judge. He just took over for Judge Alanis, a very good guy. And we have a very informal thing. We when we have matter of fact, I'm having staffing tomorrow, and then an actual court tomorrow. Right now, I have all our participants on Zoom, and they come in, and the judge meets them. How you doing? What's going on in your life? We just keep accountable. We do this twice a month. We have a court on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of the month. And then as they go through the program, if you're a track 1, or track 2 person, we have 4 phases. So the first 2 phases, you have to meet twice a week with the judge on Zoom. Starting the 19th, we're back in actual in court, which I'm gonna love, because I can see these guys face to face again and shake their hands and really get to meet them again. So we'll start doing that again. But then it gets that camaraderie, you're accountable. So we start doing that all over again. But then once they hit that phase 3 and 4 of a program, they're only seeing once a month. But then we expect more of them. We don't expect the hiccup. Like one person said, not everybody goes through it. When they first get into the program, a lot of our veterans are real hesitant at first. This isn't for me. I ain't gonna do this. This is going drug free, and they slide back because they have friends who are still drinking or doing certain things. And they got to realize, hey, and then when they get to realize, I got to cut these guys off to make this program work. And that's when we start seeing the buy-in. When they start talking to the mentor like a friend and seeing what's going on today, and we see them actually start making those changes in their actual lives, and we know they're on the way. But we have a high success rate in Metro Court with our veterans right now who go through our program.
Okay, at this point, I think I'm glad that we have the diversion programs in Metro and hopefully soon in District Court. At one time we did have Judge Murphy and Whitaker and some other of the judges coming to talk about our diversion programs. That was when we were in person, and that was quite a while ago. So maybe one of these days, if we can get everybody back again, we would like to include you also on that. And Major Seaton, everything that you're trying to do on the legislature side, just send us your contact information, put it on chat if you'd like, and maybe that's going to be our call to action, as a matter of fact, for this meeting. And so our call to action is the Veterans Diversion Program. We just want anybody who needs any information to reach out to us on how we can help the veterans in our area and our community. And just let us know how we can contact all of you, any of you, if you have any ideas. We did put up the website for the Veterans Integration Services, so we have that. But if you have any other info that you can put on our chat so we can pass out to our community Southwest members, that would be great.
I'm not really an expert here. I typed in my email and pressed enter, but it looks like it only went to Mr. Mendez. Did y'all be able to see it?
Do you want me to forward it on to everybody else? I
Can you
see
make
it there.
public?
Yeah, let me go ahead and send it to
That would
everybody
be
But
else.
I'm better at talking than I am at running a Zoom meeting.
There you go.
And we're almost done with these Zoom meetings. I'm so glad.
So, yeah,
So glad we get
as
to
far
meet
as my ask for this group and anybody you run into, advocate for legislation that helps veterans courts. That's my meeting on Monday with the legislators that are in the interim committee, is to talk to them about legislation and funding for veterans courts, state money.
Okay.
Because you can't do all these wonderful things with just volunteers like me and Tyrone. You have to have wonderful money to go with it.
Yep.
So
we do.
that's what I'm gonna do on
So-
Monday. Then come time for the next legislative session. That's the short session that only deals with funding issues, the budget. So anything that has money attached to it is a candidate for a bill of legislation. So I'm working toward that as my goal, getting some actual legislation and a fund set up at the state judiciary that courts like the 2nd District and the new 4 districts that I'm working with and any others out there that want to start a veteran court can have like a supportive fund to help them fund staffing, training, operational expenses, and things that go with the veterans court. So that's what I'm working on.
Nice.
Hey, Dorothy, here's the one thing if you want to, at your session, you can push for us. It being I've been in for a while, is that can you find that we can get funding for 501Cs? Oh, when you're starting up a veterans court program, no matter where you are in New Mexico, a 501C is a good start because when you have those volunteers to come in, people in the community want to donate to veterans. Let's say if you wanted to have a veteran luncheon or whatever it is, veteran, they won't, but there's no way to donate unless you have a 501C because you can't give money to the court system. You can't give, any kind of really to the court. So you got to have a 501C.
It's like here in Santa Fe or in any public system, like probably do this in Albuquerque. The library is a public entity. It's a city facility, but they can't raise money. Me on the Veterans Advisory Board, I'm part of the city. I'm a city appointed board member. Our board can't raise money to help veterans. So what we did was we created a 501c3 called the Santa Fe Veterans Alliance, and they raise money because they can to help veterans in our area. So we have a collaboration with a fundraising arm. And that's a very good question.
Great
There's
idea.
another angle we're working on with DVS, the State Department of Veterans Services, to create a fund within DVS, like a grant fund that 501s can make applications to, that's administered by DVS. So
That'd be very
that's
nice.
another idea that's cooking. It's not done yet, though.
Okay, so we have a comment from Mike. So today, Nob Hill UNM ECHO meeting, Tonya Covington is with the CABQ Restorative Justice Initiative. So Mike, do we have any contact information for her? That would be great. So I don't know if anybody knows of her. Lieutenant Colonel Finch, I've never heard of her. Do you work with her? Or no?
Haven't heard of her, but what I try to find is I try to find veterans out there who are willing to mentor. That's my main thing when I'm not doing my actual mentoring my own self. It's trying to find other veterans who are willing to give the time, like I said, for free to meet with these guys twice or at least once or twice a week and help them
I've got
staff.
2 mentors in Santa Fe, Tyrone, but they want to work with the new 1st Judicial District Court.
That's
I'm
good.
already recruiting.
I have
but
11.
I don't have a court.
That you're gonna find out
So
that's
how-
the one when it comes to the veterans court, a lot of people realize one of the main proponents of veterans court between us and drug and else is veterans court has mentors. Drug court doesn't have mentors, no one has mentors. veteran courts have that battle buddy for these guys to call as a friend, a guidance, confidant, whatever, to say, hey, you know, how you doing? And that's why we're so successful, because they have that outside. We're not part of, as mentors, you're not part of the legal system. You owe nothing to the court. Everything you do is confidential. Once your mentee knows that and he's going through the system, you're like his friend, his battle buddy. And that's what makes it really good. So, I mean, if you can find the best mentors you can out there, that is going to push your program a long way.
Nice. Peers are the best support out there. Yes. At this time, I don't know if there's any other questions. I know we're running
I
up.
wanted to
out of
say
time.
something, Stephanie.
Okay, sorry, John.
It's okay, no problem. So, Lieutenant Colonel Finch, you mentioned the VIC, and we put the phone number as well as the link in the chat, but just for the benefit of those that can't see the chat or can't access it, maybe they're just dialing in, could you speak just a little bit about what the VIC is and how one can access it if they are unaware?
Okay, the VIC is the Veteran Integration Center. They have an actual a facility where they actually have housing, all right off Central, and they also have an actual headquarters. They help with homelessness. They can help with food pantries. The VIC helps with clothing. They have a lot of resources and services. They help with the veterans over there once the veteran gets in. So we've actually went through the VIC for as even placing veterans in housing situations that are coming through our court system. So the VIC, they're a veteran organization who helps all veterans. When I actually went to a veteran on the street and he said, hey, I ain't have nothing to eat, I'll say, hey, first, have you tried the VIC? Have you went down to the VIC and actually signed up and say, hey, and they'll actually, go in and they'll help you out as a veteran. So they help get you on your feet. That's the one thing about the VIC that I would say every veteran should know about. So when I run in a veteran on Conklin Street, VIC is up there for me, the VIC shelter, besides our own CPC stuff. I tell everybody, I'm at the Wyoming Armory. Come by and see me, any veteran. Open door policy. Come in. I have resources for getting your jobs, going online, getting back on government systems, helping them apply for jobs, their resumes, even look for jobs. Who's out there hiring right now? How to get in contact with a lot of the job fairs and stuff like that. So, and even like another good one for veterans is the Vet Center off of the mountain. That's free. And any veteran who thinks he has mental issues, or somebody, I tell family members, if you think he has one, you're a family member, take him down to the Vet Center on Mountain and have them talk to those people. I mean, get him started in the system. I tell you, because a lot of veterans, they may not know what their brain is doing, but the family always knows. One of my favorite questions to ask when I do my briefing, I'm doing one this Saturday, is, do you have PTSD? And most of the time, every veteran goes, no, I don't have it. And I tell them, how do you know you don't have it? Your family member knows you have it because they know how you were before you went or how you changed, but you may not know. So I try to tell the family members of the VIC and of the vet centers and anybody out there trying to help veterans with issues before they get to the court system. Now, when they get to the court system, I always tell them, give me a call. Because if it's the right kind of, I won't say the right kind, if it's an actual, something that actually pertains to what we can help them with and get them in our program, we don't deal with, like one said, we don't deal with sexual assault, case with children. We don't deal with a certain kind of crime. But if it's one of them other misdemeanor or small felonies, we can get them into the program. And the best thing is that when a veteran goes through the veteran court program, it's not about the incarceration. They leave there with literally knowledge of all these vet services out there, the VIC, the vet center, all these vet services. They leave with contact information. They leave with coping skills. They leave with a lot of stuff so they don't come back. And that's the beauty of it. And I always tell them, when you leave, when I tell my veterans that they graduate, when you leave, don't keep that information. As you're out walking around, pass it on to another veteran. Let the other veteran know, hey, man, I got help like this. This is working. I found food or shelter. This is how I got this. This is the conduct you call. Everybody has open door policy in the veteran community, but a lot of veterans don't know that. Too much pride.
I have a question. Does these services help with possibly diagnosing veterans with dementia?
That would be the vet center on Mountain Street. They have clinicians down there. Now, also, if they're actually a combat veteran, go over to the VA. The VA is the one like Camille Lopez, her whole organization there, they deal with it. They'll actually take a veteran in and say, hey, have a sit down. And they'll see if he has PTSD. But there are some resources and they're free that the veterans can actually use. But once you start talking to a veteran, you get into the veteran community, you're gonna realize a lot of them will not voluntarily go talk to quote unquote a psychiatrist or something like that because they think it's a weakness. You got to get them over that. So that's why if you can get someone down, I would say, hey, just swing by the vet center, just go talk to them. Or certain people I know, just go talk to them. And then they realize, hey, maybe I need to have, I'm having these issues with sleeping, insomnia, or sleep apnea, whatever it is, and it's all part of another systemic problem. Maybe, it's PTSD, but it manifests in different ways, and different people, the way they deal with it. Some people drink more, smoke more, whatever it is, but it can all be fostered off some kind of PTSD experience in the military that they haven't just dealt with. But yes, but the vet center is free.
Okay. Thank you.
David,
Appreciate that.
David had a question about, I don't know, David, do you want to just ask it since you're on? You had a question about other programs. So for the benefit of those that can't see the chat, I think it would be helpful to state the question and then share Adolfo's response.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering if there were any other programs in the courts like this one, because I'm hearing a lot of wonderful things from this program, but Attorney Mendez or District Attorney Mendez pointed out a link and sent us a link for the specialty court. So there's a link on the specialty court for the District Attorney of Bernalillo County. So if you go to the District Attorney of Bernalillo County's website, you can click through there and navigate, or I'm not sure if we can share that with the community because you guys can't see the chat, but you can definitely get there by going to the District Attorney of Bernalillo County website.
Yeah, and if I may, and what we have there is links to all of the specialty courts that are available, not just for veterans, but for the range of specialty courts that are out there. Right,
and I actually looked it up right away, and it was, you have the drug court, mental health court, DWI court, veterans diversion program, and young adult court, and of course there's the metropolitan courts. They have a big old breakout of behavioral health, DWI behavioral health, which is separate, early intervention program, domestic violence solutions. So it goes on and on. There's quite a bit of resources out there if you go to the website.
And I had one more follow-up question, if I could, Stephanie. It was for Lieutenant Colonel Finch. Lieutenant Colonel Finch, you mentioned some really impressive numbers in terms of low recidivism, in terms of those that go through the program that you work with closely with the veterans and Metro Court. And you've also mentioned several different items, right, that come into play that being tremendously important, like getting off substance abuse, getting them clean, camaraderie, getting rid of some of the negative influences that may be participating in behavior that persons that are trying to get out of criminal behavior need to get off of, structured mentorship. You mentioned several. In your experience, can you identify a top like 2 or 3 that seem to be the most important for this type of restorative justice approach to be successful in the case of veterans, or even more generally?
Well, I mostly deal with the veteran, but when it comes to the veterans, I would say getting them first, having them realize they have a problem. Because when we first get them, a lot of them realize it was just a bad break. I was one DUI. Yeah, but I was telling them, how many times were you driving that way before you got caught? It wasn't just the one. So once they realize, hey, they come to the fact, yeah, I have a problem. 2, they realize the mentorship. Hey, we're not part of the court system. When they realize they have a true friend out there, another battle buddy, another military guy, and as military guys, we hold each other accountable. I mean, I'm a combat veteran, so when the guy tried to shoot smoke at me when he first meet me, and I come back with him, he realized, oh, this guy has walked the same walk, shoot the same dirt. I came buffaloing. So then we get that real conversation going of how to get his life back on track. So the mentorship, first him realizing, hey, I have a problem, then them really buying into the program. We've had, and like they said, we've had mentees. It took them 4 or 5, some of them even 6 months to really say, you know what, these people are really trying to help me. I can do it myself. And they realize, hey, it ain't about just doing it yourself. Listen to those therapists, let it out, air out those feelings, and do your thing. But once they realize that they have a problem, they deal with their mentorships, and then they take the program seriously. Them 3 components right there normally get some success right there out of the program. Because once down the line, 6, 7, 8 months down the line, when we're clapping for them, because they say, when they stand well on their own, they'll say, I've been drug-free or whatever I've done for the last 9 months. And everybody claps for them. Other veterans, hey man, good job, good job. You see the change, you just see it coming about. So those 3 things, realizing you have a problem, getting with your mentor, and then really buying into the program. Don't just take it as a check the box thing. I'm gonna do this thing and get on out of here. No, I'm actually gonna use these resources and see what's out there for me as a veteran.
I have a question for Colonel Finch. Colonel, would you mind sharing your email with me so we can stay in touch?
Oh, okay. So email me at TYFI, the first 2 letters of my name, TY for Tyrone, FI for Finch, and then I use 007 at MSN.com. All my James Bond fan. So TYFI 007 at MSN.com.
Copy.
And as for any question, anything about vet court, I'll start one. We have pamphlets. We have I'll give some of our Metro Court stuff, just to show people how we got it started, how we started, or where we're at, or our actual agreements we have our mentees sign when they come into the program. I can share all that stuff with you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Major Seaton, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, everything that you are doing for our veterans. Lieutenant Colonel Finch, what can we say? We're gonna probably be talking to you some more, see what you can do and what else you can help us with in our CPC group here. And of course, Mr. Mendez, thank you again for joining us. At this time, I guess if there's any more questions, please ask us. And at the same time, I'm going to post our Southwest CPC mail address in case you come up with a question, because we all know it happens after the fact. You realize you wanted to ask a question and you didn't. So we posted it early and I'm going to post it now, but at the same time, Robbie, can you make sure I got it right? Because sometimes I don't. There, we got it. Thank you guys for attending. Right now, I don't know if there's anything else we need to cover, Jonathan. This is usually the time that we go over with our APD officers. And right now, today we didn't get, and I'm hoping there's nothing going on in the Southwest area that they are not able to join us. And you know, that they're not tied up and it just slipped their minds or just
Finding
didn't
more
get on the
veterans
calendar.
out there to arrest.
Oh, let's hope not.
Let's hope not.
I
Let's
don't
hope
see
we're all
anything
safe.
outside, so who knows?
So
Anything outside?
no, yeah, I think you did great, Stephanie. So as we kind of move to close, I did have one more question I wanted to ask and direct it towards Mr. Mendez. So as we continue to think more broadly, you mentioned that there's a drive to, that these diversion programs, veterans diversion programs, as well as the others of the specialty course, they're not at capacity. There's still room in these spaces and with these resources. Are there any that are particularly underutilized, more so than others, or like, negatively stigmatized and people just want to stay away from it? Are there any others that we might want to consider also having a session where we, provide some education to the community about them? So again, others might be able to take advantage of them and it might be a resource that is utilized more appropriately in our community.
Yeah, I think, thank you for that question. I think all of them are underutilized. The one program that is a district attorney program, so one it's not, we've been talking a lot of the programs that are based in the courts. One that is a district attorney program is called pre-prosecution diversion, PPD. That one is one that we are trying to basically triple our enrollment, right? It's basically, it's an off-ramp before it even gets to the courts, right? So it's pre-prosecution, right? So if there's a program that I would say needs more attention and more emphasis, it's that one. Again, because it's like the name says it, right? It gets people out of the system much earlier, and we have our program personnel who guide people through treatment and counseling and all of the types of things we've been talking about, but before it hits the courts. So
Outstanding. So Lieutenant Colonel Finch, want to thank you for joining us. Major Seaton, really want to thank you for again joining us and the information, the work that you all do. Adolfo Mendez, Mr. Mendez, we thank you again for being with us and providing some additional perspective from the Bernalillo County District Attorney's Office. And again, we just want to thank all of you for the work that you do to not only make our community safer, but the work you do with those that are involved in the criminal justice system, because everyone is not necessarily as Attorney Mendez, you said it earlier, right? The appropriate diversion for all cases is not necessarily incarceration, right? Some people need help, and it's a better outcome for all involved, right? Major Seaton, you brought this out, when there's a way to get them out of the system, not keeping them in the system. And so I just want to thank you all for the work that you are doing in that space, and for educating us on these. I learned a lot tonight that I didn't know before. And so the degree to which we all are educated more as a community in terms of the resources that are available, the more we'll be able to kind of ensure a safe community, because the goal of the community policing councils aren't to just say what police is doing wrong. It's really to make all our communities safer, right? And so police are a piece of that, but the community, we're also a piece of that, and we have responsibility as well. So thank you for educating us so that we can be better advocates in our community for those that need the help. And so we would like to mention that the email is already put in the chat for anyone that can't see the chat. Our email address, at least at this current state, is abq.southwest.cpc@gmail.com. So if anyone has questions or you have thoughts on the topics, would like to get involved, we would love to hear from you. And if you would like to be involved in the Southwest CPC as a council member, we'd love to have your participation, your volunteerism as well. So please reach out to us. We would love to engage with you in whatever capacity you would like to do so. As a preview, actually as reiterating the call to action that we had for this month, Stephanie mentioned it briefly, and we did include it in the MailChimp mailer that went out. But the Veterans Diversion Program is supported by multiple entities, as you've already heard tonight, right? And so one portion of that is the VA hospital, the Metro Court, right? And there's many other pieces that participate, but one important piece of that is volunteers. And so you heard a little bit about that a little earlier. And so the diversion program is interested in volunteers, and there's many avenues to do that. And so we have included a link in the MailChimp, which we'll also include in the chat as well, if you'd like to be interested in volunteering your time, even whether you're a veteran or not, to help this resource be as successful as it can be. And so that's our call to action to this month. If you're looking for something to volunteer with, we would encourage you to consider volunteering with the Veteran Diversion Program. And so with that, we also would like to mention the topic for next month as a general preview. So next month, the topic is actually over-representation of persons of color in correctional facilities in New Mexico. And so we'd like to have a conversation about that, right? To provide some education, but also see if there's things that we can do to impact that, right? To make that more just, more reasonable, and more appropriate for all citizens, right? And so that's what we'll be talking about next month, and we'd love to have you all join us. And so with that, I finished my spiel. Stephanie, do you have anything else that you wanted to offer or mention?
No, I just want to thank everybody again, all our council members and all our community members. And with that, just enjoy your summer. Welcome back to living again, but please be safe out there. And thank you guys very much for being with us tonight.
Yeah. Thank you all. I think a couple of any else on Southwest CPC have anything they wanted to say or offer? Any council members? Okay. Well, I guess we'll end here. Stephanie did a great job moderating, so thank you so much. David, Robbie, and Andrea, thank you so much for also helping field the questions and ask questions. And so I think we'll end here. And if anyone would like to hang on, I'll be on for a little bit if anyone wants to just check in or talk. But everyone, feel free to go if you need to.
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye-bye. So. I